How are you? Welcome to the blah, blah, blah.
You know, it's not every day that I get to catch up with an old friend.
All right, here we go.
It's part of the blooper reel. Can we put a blooper reel together after this?
Yes.
And it's even more special when that friend is someone who's gone through so many unique, life-changing experiences, like my friend, Brother Andrey Silva.
Hello, Brother Andrey Silva. How are you?
Great. How are you, Sister Elio?
I'm good. Welcome to the Making Changes podcast.
Glad to be here.
If you were a young adult in the 90s like me, you might have heard of Brother Andrey. He was the lead singer of Kai, the first and until now, the only Filipino boy band who found mainstream success and popularity in the U.S. A lot has changed since his music career with Kai. Now Brother Andrey is a minister of the gospel in the Church of Christ. So today, we're going to talk about all of the changes he's gone through and the life of service that God has paved for him. I'm Malia Garcia Pablo, and you're listening to a special episode of Making Changes.
Well, we're so glad that you traveled all the way here from Texas.
Yes.
Just to be here on our podcast today.
Yes, Paul. Thank you for having me, and praises be unto our Lord God.
So, Brother Andrey, for those that are, who may have known you from years and years ago, like you and I have known each other for like 30 years already. Well,
Yeah.
Our age has just been revealed.
Yes.
But for those that have known you for a long time and are probably wondering, what happened, Brother Andrey Silva?
Yeah.
Where have you been? What you been up to?
I've been in Africa for almost a decade. I was assigned there as a minister, doing the work of the ministry in Africa. I often tell the brethren that, us ministers who were assigned there, we were able to have a front row seat to the amazing things that our Lord God was doing for the church on that continent. It was a lot of work, and so we also witnessed how God truly upheld us as we fulfilled our duties in the ministry, taking care of the brethren, making sure that the church would progress and grow, which was the aim of the church administration in the first place for sending us there. Many memorable experiences. I learned how to ride a horse in Africa. All right, just finish worship service.
I have seen those pictures, like on mountaintops, right?
Yes. They're in the country of Lesotho, which is known as the Mountain Kingdom. There was a group of people or a village there in the middle of the mountains who were thirsting for the words of God. And we've had brethren who are from there wanting us to share the words of God there. And so we would have to ride 2 hours on horseback up and down about 5 mountains before we would reach that village, a village called Halermonyane village. We're about to have worship service there too. Just trying to get down this mountain. And memorable experience in that place is the first time I was able to go there.
He's laughing at me, eh?
Because I remember how difficult it was to get there. It's Hafachani, if you could see the chapel in the back.
Have you ridden horses before?
That was the first time. And so very painful.
I can imagine. For 2 hours?
2 hours on a mountain, rocky.
One way, 2 hours
One way. 2 hours one way. But to finally get to that last mountain, and as soon as you get over that peak, the village can see that you're almost to their village. Right? They're still quite a distance away, but they're waiting to see that silhouette to cross that peak. And as soon as they saw us, along with the translator and the other Basutu people that were with me, you start hearing the village singing and chanting. Singing and chanting. I was like, what is that? What are they singing? I was asking my translator. He said, they're singing a song about how the minister is now here, and we will be able to hear the words of God and such. And so that was a very touching moment, just to see how they were thirsting to hear the teachings that we have inside the church. And so that was a very touching moment for us, yeah.
Speaking of music, we know that you are very musically gifted, and to be able to spend a decade in a country where people, I mean, music is their language.
Yeah.
Were you able to also, do music while you were there?
We were able to have many musical projects there by the mercy of our Lord God, And as you mentioned, music is a very natural thing for the African people. When they're happy, they sing. When they're sad, they sing. When they're angry, whatever emotion they're feeling, they convey it through song. And so, to have music made for the church was very easy, very enjoyable to work with the brethren in regards to that.
We make it in this world another day. There is light.
We were able to make different ranges of music, to the traditional type of African music, to what they like to call Afro beats, more contemporary African music. We were able to do that. Made music videos as well. And so, that was one of the more memorable things as well for me, to be able to connect to the brethren that way.
And when you think back, Brother Andrey, when you were growing up here in the Bay Area, in a million years, did you ever imagine spending a whole decade in Africa in a life of service?
I didn't think in 2 million years that I would ever get that experience. But, when I first heard that I was going to go to Africa, of course I was excited, because for the most part, the continent was somewhat of a untouched region when it came to the works that we have in the church. There was a presence already in certain countries, but continent as a whole, there was still a lot of work to be done, because our mission was the expansion of the church in Africa. And so, the guidance of the church administration pulled us through so many times. The inspiration that we received from our beloved executive minister pulled us through so many times, those difficult times when we were driving those long distances, leaving the house when the sun wasn't even up yet, coming home when the sun had already set, not being to spend time with our family as much. They understood what the mission was, why we were there, and so they were very supportive.
Yes. We're going to just take a trip down memory lane a little bit to just kind of really show just how full circle your life has come. For those of you watching us at home or listening to us, if you were a teenager in the 90s, then you probably have heard of a little group called Kai. Do you remember that group, Brother Andrey?
Wait, let me think. Oh, yeah.
So, it's just so amazing that you're talking about making music in Africa and just all the experiences you had there. But in reality, it seems like God was already paving the way.
Absolutely.
So take us back to, when you were a teenager here in the Bay Area, which, by the way, I should say, I do remember because we were both in Fremont local,
yes, right?
In the 90s. You and some of the guys there, you guys would always sing a cappella in the men's bathroom because the acoustics was really
just
good.
Right, yeah.
Right, but, how did you end up in a group called Kai, and just how it just became to be, still to this day, the only Filipino boy band that actually reached mainstream? So how did it all begin?
Well, like you mentioned, it all started in the local congregation of Fremont. Me, my brother, and 2 other brothers had a little a cappella group. And, we used to sing for church functions.
So here's the origin story of Kai. One day, Brother Andrey went to a family party where he started to jam on the piano with a cousin whom he hadn't met before. His cousin later found out that Brother Andrey sang with a group of his friends at church and invited him to one of their practices.
And ever since then, at that point, we were developing musically, even more. To the point where, we were almost going to call it quits because, we had been doing it maybe 2 years at that point.
And you guys were all in high school at this
Yeah,
point.
we were all in high school, and some of us were graduating already, wanted to move on, go to college, think of our future careers and all of that. And then before we were going to hang it up, the gloves, we all decided, we should record a song. Just so we could show our future kids that, hey, look, Daddy used to sing. And we recorded this song, and it was a song called Say You'll Stay. And we decided, well, just for fun, since we're going to quit anyway, let's just send it out to all these radio stations. Because we had friends who were also working at radio stations who kind of gave us, the information to where to send it. And so we sent it out just for fun, not thinking anything of it. And before we knew it, these stations were starting to play it. And it was gaining popularity. Like people were actually starting to request it. It started there in the deep south, there in Louisiana.
Louisiana
of all places, yeah. And so before we knew it, it was gaining popularity, gaining notice by Billboard. We were charting on Billboard as an unsigned act. And so that's when we were getting calls, from major record labels. And so, I guess the rest is history, right? Then we went on to do some things in the music industry.
And what was that one big record label company that actually came knocking on your door and you guys...
It was several, but we chose to sign with a record company called Geffen Records. Geffen Records, who's also part of DreamWorks. And we were able to do tours and all of that. Other experiences performing with very big acts and names.
So before you, obviously you were the only member of the church.
Yeah, during that time.
In that group. How did you come to the decision to join, to be signed, be officially signed with a record label company, which meant you're going to tour and there's just a lot more demand. What was that decision process for you like?
Well, part of that decision was my membership in the Church of Christ. That was one of the things that I took serious consideration in, especially being reminded by my dad and my family, you better not miss the worship service. And it's true, and at that point, just to bring me back down to earth, I needed to hear that, I can't miss the worship service. I have to include God in this plan, every step of the way, which was also what I heard from many of the ministers that I was asking advice from during that time. Brother Steve Kroll, he advised me so much during that time. And I remember him telling me, you need to include God in every part of this plan. He has a plan for you. Make sure he's part of it. And so, before I signed the contract with the record label, I asked if they could add a stipulation
in the contract,
if that my religious practice, my attendance of the worship service, has to take precedence over all things, shows and everything. And they said okay. They put it in. That's when I said, okay, fine. I will sign the contract.
And the rest of the group, they were okay with that? That you had these... Yeah,
the guys knew how important my membership in the church was. They never questioned it, And if anything, when I mentioned that, they were like, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, can you put that in a contract for him?
Oh, well, that's really nice of them.
I signed it, and I know that God was part of the plan, because when I talked to one of the high executives of Geffen Records, we were talking with him, and then that whole thing about church came up. And he said, Church of Christ, Iglesia, I said, yes, Iglesia ni Cristo. Do you have a church there on Clay and Divisodario in San Francisco?
He knew.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah. Like, how did you know? He's like, I used to live across the street.
Oh, wow.
You guys took all the parking every Sunday and Thursday. He was just joking. But he said, the brethren in your church are amazing. They're so nice and accommodating.
Yeah.
So he remembered that. He said, you need to go to church.
So of all the executives, right,
Yeah.
in this huge
Out of all the record
company,
labels that they were, we picked this one
Yes.
who happens to know.
and the executive you were assigned
Yeah.
knew the church.
Knew the church.
And so what did you have to do to make sure that, they checked the cities? And
They asked for a copy of the latest issue of the God's Message magazine, because in the back,
Right.
The older...
This is still the 90s.
Yeah, the 90s, there's a whole directory back there.
Right.
And they would base our travels and everything
Yeah.
on the schedule of the worship service of where we were going to be at.
Yeah.
And so I was like, God is really part of this,
Yeah.
which was, it made me more confident to pursue it even more. And, another thing that I realized, just now looking back, God really wanted me to learn about the music industry maybe and how to produce music and to write and how to use a studio and all of those things, so that now I can be blessed to be entrusted to be contributing to the music of the church
Decades later.
And so I know that was the reason, and I'm so happy and I feel so blessed to have that kind of guidance to where it would lead me to be able to contribute to the needs of the church.
Let's go back a little bit on the whole, your dad, did say, make sure you don't miss worship service,
Yeah.
but you're a kid at that time, you're a teenager, young.
17, 18.
Right.
Yeah.
And it would be so tempting to be like, well, my dad's not with me on this tour.
Yeah.
I could I'm busy, I'm tired, just had a concert. And, but what was it that just at that age, that you just never let go of that? And you just really there were no excuses, no matter what.
Yeah.
You were still gonna
Even if
worship.
I had to drive 3 hours by myself because we were that far away from a chapel in some part of the country,
Wow.
I would go the night before. I would look for it just so the next morning I wouldn't get lost. So I would always make that effort, only because number one, I was God conscious about everything, that He was really behind this. Talking to the executive, talking to Brother Steve Kroll, who guided me through all of these. I already knew that He was, and so me being God conscious, I didn't want to not hold my end of the bargain.
Right.
My promise that He would be part of the plan, and I would make sure that my services to Him would never be hindered, by this great experience that He
Right.
imagine, He's already blessed me with this kind of experience, and then that blessing is the reason why my
Yes.
services to Him would be hindered. I would not allow that to happen.
Yes.
And so I would always make time, and and even though my dad or my family wasn't with us on the road, God was with us on the road. He's with us all the time, everywhere. And so
He would know. If
he
you
would
missed
know.
worship
Yeah,
service.
he would know. And so, just I guess my integrity to my promise to God was one of the things that drove me to be serious about it.
So even though you were, 17, 18 years old at that time, you weren't in ministry yet, obviously, but you were always sharing your faith already.
Yeah, I was. The church, all the teachings that we hold, and when it comes to salvation, even at that young age, I already knew that the church, it was necessary in one's life to be able to have a relationship with God, to be able to have a peaceful life, to be able to, have that peace in the end, when everything is gone, on the day of judgment, salvation, that kind of thing. So, meaning to say, in the grander scheme of things, our membership in the Church of Christ is a matter of life and death. And so I wanted to share that with everyone that I cared about. I even shared with my bandmates, introduced it to them, and invited them all the time.
I mean, just you making sure that you never missed worship service.
Absolutely, they saw it. They saw it, and there were times when some of them would come with me. And so, in that sense, I wanted to be able to do my part to invite, and I knew my part was to invite. The rest of it would be God, letting them hear the word of God, letting them have that seed of faith being planted in them.
Right.
And once that's planted and they express their interest in the church, then I would be the one to take care of them. So that was always what was in my mind, inviting.
So a lot of people who have known you, since Kai days and are watching this, and seeing you for the first time in decades are probably wondering, how do you go from, Kai, how do you go from being with a big record label company and then now a minister of the gospel? This podcast is called Making Changes, right? How do you go from that to making the biggest change in your life?
When it comes to making that kind of a change in your life, something so drastic, it was pretty drastic.
Oh, it's huge.
You kind of have to understand the will of God for you and know that He has the plan for you and allow that change to happen, embracing and trusting in what God has planned for you. And so that's kind of what I experienced. I was in this singing group, and we gained some type of popularity. And I understood. Now, part of it is me understanding that God is the one who allowed me to experience this great opportunity and experience. And to hold on to that promise that you made to God to dedicate your life to Him in service. And so God was really the one who called me into the ministry. Because if it was up to me, it wasn't something that was in my mind to join the ministry at all. I also had a career in real estate before the ministry. And, just looking on everything on paper, by human standards, I was good. I was doing well in life. I could establish my life already. But I just couldn't get the ministry out of my mind. And so that's what I often tell young brothers that I get to speak with when they ask me about the ministry. Because they feel like maybe they're being called. I said, if you can't get it out of your mind, that's God calling you. Now you're either going to answer the call or not. But imagine the great blessings you'll receive, what you will gain if you are able to answer the call of God and to submit to His plan for you. Allow that to happen, And that's what I did. I just allowed it to happen. And
So how did you get the first call?
Okay, so our resident minister during that time, he was encouraging me to join the ministry. And I was a little resistant in the beginning. But I said to myself, okay, this might be God calling me. Let me have a panata for 1 week.
What's a panata for those that don't know?
Panata is a devotional prayer. You set a time every single day for that period of time that you're going to have that panata or devotional prayer. I exit the sanctuary of the locale of Fremont. I'm walking to my car, and then the resident minister pulls up.
And you had already finished your
I'm already
7
finished.
days of your devotional
Yeah, and I'm thinking
prayer.
I'm done. I'm going to go to my car, go home. And then he said, Brother Andrey, come with me to my office. I need to give you something. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. Not thinking anything of it.
Right.
He said, go ahead and sit down there at the desk. I said, okay. And he pulls out of the drawer. He puts this piece of paper down on the desk and slides it to me. And it's an application for the ministry. I said, oh, okay. And I signed the application and filled it up. And I sent it in. And then, not thinking anything of it. And then there was a special gathering for the applicants. And so we went. I went to go meet there, and there were more applications to fill. And the one leading that particular meeting was Brother Bob Pilleen, right? He was the district minister at that time. And so, me being still kind of 50-50 about it, he said, okay, I need you to read the directions and I need you to fill out the form. I said, this is probably God's calling. So I started going back to God's calling me, God's calling me. Then I attend the first preparatory class, which was held in the U.S. West office during that time in Daly City. I was a little, I was lacking confidence, to tell you the truth. But I just kept going, and I kept learning, kept going, kept learning. And I was able to finish the preparatory class with them, and I gained so much knowledge, the words of God, the pristine teachings that we uphold, the characteristics, values, the qualities that a minister should have, the values. And, I started getting more serious about it. So if during the beginning of prep I was 50-50, I was more 60-40 now. Yeah. And so, after prep, we'll request from the church administration. There's no guarantee that you'll be, guard your hearts, pray a lot. And so that's what we did. And I honestly was thinking to myself that I probably wasn't going to make it. Then I got a call, a month later after that. Brother Andrey, you've been approved to go to the Philippines.
Had you been to the Philippines before?
I had been to the Philippines before, but with the band.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. And so my experience with the Philippines was red carpet, nice hotels,
right.
Good food, the restaurants, all of that. And so I'm thinking, the Philippines is nice.
Air conditioned all the
Air
time.
conditioned all the time. This is going to be a breeze, And so I leave for the Philippines for the ministry. But, when I got there, I was thinking, maybe I should call my mother to get me a ticket to go home. And so,
But what made you stay? You obviously didn't go home. What made you just keep going?
My family has a big part to do with it. My dad, my mom, well, you're there already. Man up.
That's tough love right there. Yeah. You made your bed.
You're already there. Yeah. What are you doing?
Yeah.
So I said, okay, fine. But, I would spend nights in my bed crying.
Oh.
And I set up another panata or devotional prayer in the temple, asking if he was really calling me. Are you sure?
Because you're because I'm not.
Yeah. And so, I was struggling, I didn't understand Tagalog. I probably, if I were to attend the Tagalog worship service around that time, I probably understood maybe 3 to 5% of what was being, because I really didn't know any Tagalog.
Really?
Any Filipino, the language.
But you could sing Tagalog songs, but
because,
not really.
Because it's on the screen in the karaoke, you could read them.
That's true.
But I didn't understand them. And so, I was having a really difficult time. Just how am I going to learn? All the classes are in Filipino. How am I going to, communicate with my roommates? They're all speaking Filipino.
Right.
And so I'm in the temple every day.
Culture shock then.
Culture shock, just everything shock. I was in the temple praying every single day at a particular time about it. But about a month into my devotional prayers, I found myself kneeling in the temple, crying, thanking God for calling me in the ministry. It was just, I guess, another change was made in me. And from that point onward, I couldn't see my life without the ministry.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've been in the ministry now, Brother Andrey, for how many years now?
Many years.
When you were ordained, what year?
2014.
2014.
The first ordination after Centennial.
But you first went to the Philippines in 2007.
Yeah.
Okay, so the math is about 17 years total?
Yeah, about 17 years.
So in your 17 years of being a minister, and even now as a district minister, obviously you've baptized so many souls. You've been an instrument to help change the lives of so many people, right? But looking back, there is one friend in your life that God used you to call. Tell us about him before we bring him on.
All right. Brother Errol was one of the guys that I used to sing with. One of the more amazing vocals that you'll ever hear, coming out of a 5'1" Oh no, he's not 5'1". I'm just kidding. But he has that kind of voice where, and I sang with him for 15 years. But even up until the very last time that I sang with him, whenever we do our solos, they go to the front and we stand in the back.
Right.
Even during that last show, 15 years later, he's singing his solo and all of us are still blown away. It never gets old. That's the kind of voice that he has, he was one of the ones that I got close to, only because I think me and him had somewhat similar personalities. And there's also that aspect of, with me, when I care, I really care, and nothing's going to get in the way of me caring. And that's how I feel about my friends. That's how I feel about my family. And there were many instances in the life of Brother Errol where he would ask for my help. And nothing would get in the way of that. It doesn't matter what it is. And so one of the things that I saw that would help him, that would change his life, make a change in his life, was if he was in the church. Because God is the solution to all things. No matter how difficult life can get, God is the solution. And so that was the only solution that I could think of to be able to help my friend, my brother. So I said, I'm gonna work hard to get Brother Errol to join the church, But there were many difficulties, many hindrances along the way. There was even a rift that happened between me and him at one point during our journey in that musical career that we had. But in the end, God worked it all out. And, I would consider Brother Errol's life one of those spiritual success stories, and God's presence in his life is apparent, not only with him, but even with his family, the duties that they have. And so, that's, it's such an honor. It's such a privilege, to know that God may have used me as an instrument to be able to help my friend, to help my brother. So, yeah, Brother Errol.
Well, we're going to have you both on.
All right.
And I think
Let's hope we don't cause too much of a ruckus in here. I'm kidding.
I think for those that may just know you and Errol as, the guys, the frontmen of Kai, I think they're really going to be surprised just how deep your relationship and your friendship and your brotherhood really goes, right?
In our next episode, we'll meet Errol. We'll get to see and hear how special and deep his friendship turned brotherhood with Brother Andrey really is, and how the special bond that started with music literally saved Errol's life. Stay tuned for part 2 of this story. And if you found value in what you heard today, please share this with a friend or anyone you know that could use this story in their life. Listen to more episodes of Making Changes anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening, and may your change uplift you.